Good morning, everyone. This is Jaqueline Prince, excuse me, and today we have Caryn Terres, who I am so excited to present you with her super conscious living. Um, Caryn is a super conscious leadership mentor, a creatrix of superconscious living, a vocal activator, community leader, homeschooling mom of three, and a master of energy alchemy. Oh my heaven, that's a quite a mouthful. So, superconscious living is a step-by-step process that teaches you how to lead life in alignment with your own unique frequency. It is a lifestyle that allows you to command the energy of your emotions, which is energy and motion, from the mental plane to the physical plane. This is kind of like a law of attraction, or becoming the master of your destiny, captain of your ship, is something I always like to talk about. This type of superconscious living allows you to create your dream life with fearless authenticity. The power of superconscious, the power of the superconscious, allows for global luminaries and emerging public figures to claim they are unshameable, unstoppable, and I will go ahead and put that on there, unfuckwithable. All while leading with peace, love, unity, and respect for all beings. Caryn, my heavens, I just am so amazed at your energy, your presence. I've watched your videos, and I just had to have you on. Your energy is just it's it's um, it's just ebullient, and your transmissions, your clarity of the way you present your material. But I have to ask you, as a mother of three and being 32 years old, my heavens, how did you come into this particular frame of life, Caryn?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me on, Jacqueline. I'm really excited. I was raised in a very interesting situation where I live in Salt Lake City, Utah, but I am not of the predominant faith of Utahns. Or I was. There was an 18-month stint in high school, but that seems to be a rite of passage for a lot of us around here that weren't raised in the tradition. Um, and my parents were Catholic and I was baptized, but they were really musicians. And when I was 9, we became Unitarian Universalists. So I was raised in this society of people being openly gay and people talking about all sorts of different religions. And you could be atheist and still Unitarian, and you could be Jewish and still Unitarian. And I learned about all the different faiths and all the different stories. So from a very young age of about 10 years old, I even had a transgendered minister was the one who married me. So having these very quote unquote radical ideas was actually how I was raised. It was just every Sunday I saw my minister and I knew his backstory. And every Sunday I saw my youth leader, who was a Jewish lesbian from New York, who was a total badass. And it was just it was a very eye-opening for me when I would then try to have other conversations with people and they were just so bigoted, but you could tell it was just how they thought. It was just the way that they were raised. Like, they didn't mean to be. They weren't actively trying to be arrogant or narcissistic or abusive or disrespectful or anything. It was literally how they were taught to be by other people. And it was just something that sat with me. I wanted to be a psychologist, but I really hate insurance companies. I really do. I wanted to be a massage therapist, which I am. I'm a body worker. So that's where a lot of this came from, was actually doing body work on people and then essentially having them say, like, how did you know that I had an injury in my leg when I was 10? Like, how did you know to ask me that question while you were working on this part of my body? Or I remember an experience where I was working on someone's knee and I started asking them about their grandma. And they were like, well, my grandma just had a knee replacement. And they were actually holding her, like, something about grandma. And I didn't really understand it then. Now I have a whole lot more like hindsight and understanding of what I was doing. But I wanted to be a massage therapist since I was 7. So there just have been things in my life that if I want it, and my husband, anyone who's ever known me will tell you that if there's something that I want enough, by hell or high water, I will figure out a way to get it. And lots of times it just like appear, and they're like, how do you do this? And then I found out that that was a thing by watching The Secret. Like, oh, that's law of attraction. Oh, that's this. And very dabbly, and learned from this mentor named Lorna Johnson about, she was a very, very intense individual, and someone who didn't care about being the baddest bitch in the room, didn't care if you thought that she was an arrogant, cold-hearted bitch, because she was telling you this truth that you really needed to hear to actually change your life, and wasn't sugarcoating it, wasn't beating around the bush, wasn't, because there's a lot of people in this sphere that just, they're addicted to healing. They change their addiction to shame and trauma to their addiction to getting healed. They have all their healers, they have all their crystals, they have all their incense, they have all this energy in their sphere, but nothing's actually moving forward in their life because they don't believe that they are worthy of moving forward. And then I
So
read
they
this.
haven't really tapped into that subconscious programming, which I think was really interesting as you were talking about. That was just the way you were raised. You were brought up into this, in this universal, all-inclusive environment, and yet we have so many humans that are also brought up in other non-inclusive environments, that really talks about the programming that we take on as children, which really gives us our limiting beliefs, and we think that that's something that I am, I am my limiting beliefs, and that that is the truth. But what we don't understand is that there's really a higher, unity truth. And so uncovering or tapping into that, I hear, is what you have really done in your life, as well as, we won't get into the conversation about the crystal children and the rainbow children, which I don't know if you're the crystal or a rainbow. I think you're even a rainbow, of just that's just coming from the higher dimensional realms of reality. You just bring with you an entire different matrix of energy and vibration, which is really part of this awakening that the planet is going through. So does that bring anything up with you?
Yeah. So for me, the whole reason why I even started in the life coaching, transformational consulting, whatever freaking term you want to put on it, industry, was actually with a mission to obliterate it. I wanted to teach enough moms. So I used to be, not that I used to be, but I created this program called Pleasurable Parenting and Sensual Motherhood that was all about really using your five senses and your intuition to parent with extreme joy, because kids are going to be kids, and for us to expect them to be mini adults was just, it's just ridiculous. And I learned all about this history and epigenetics, and I really dove super, super deep into neuroscience and child development. After the birth of my daughter, she was born unassisted. My midwife showed up 15 minutes
Oh
after
my
I gave
heavens.
birth to her. So something snapped in me. That was 3 years ago this June. So almost, if you were to go and look at things that I did 3 years ago, you'd be like, is that even the same person? And it is really because I just stopped. I dropped all the weight of the world and weight of the expectations and weight of, I have to please other people first. Because for some reason, my daughter, I have two sons, but my daughter just snapped inside of me this, like, you need to step up, because what you're doing isn't, not that it isn't good enough, but you need to show me how I'm supposed to act. So I know that everything that I'm doing, my daughter is going to be like, I can't even, like, I start to cry when I think about how her future and how her brother's future is going to be, because there are parents out there that don't, we're literally the freaking, we're ending it. More women are walking out on their husbands right now during COVID because they literally are refusing to deal with the psychological, verbal, and emotional abuse that isn't physical, because we actually got this while you guys are gone 70 hours a week. And it took a pandemic for us to realize that. So for me, I've been turning this whole thing around as you get your children all the time. I have friends that are like, Caryn, isn't this what you wanted? Weren't you always joking about how you wanted people to have to raise their own children because the responsibility you take on isn't to raise them till they're 5 and then pass them on to somebody else to raise and then wonder why they're assholes? It's actually to raise them in alignment with what you believe. And I was all like, yeah, but did I cause the pandemic? And someone just looked at me, they're like, you're pretty fucking powerful. I don't know though. And
I
we just
think
like, it
that
was a
we had,
laughing matter, but like it really is something that for 2 years I've been like, no, my kids should not, they should not be going to a life coach in their 30s. They should, having therapy as a rite of passage in our society is bullshit as far as I'm concerned. That means that your parents, they didn't own up to what it is that they needed to be, because it's every single problem in this world has nothing to do with the people outside of you. No one and nothing has power over you to make it that way. It's all internal.
well, I
100%.
think that that's, we have so identified with our external reality. So we're always living in the conditions that are happening to me.
Mhm.
We're living in the past and we're living in the future. We were never, I'm 64 years old. I was never, and it's taken me, my journey through the valley of the shadow of death has been pretty severe to come to this place where, mindfulness and being present, and instead of being the victim, that I have accepted, my inner responsibility to this life. But typically the world has not been taught. Humans have not been taught how to live in the now. So they, you know, project their children over onto someone else's responsibility so that they continue their consent of being that victim, or like you said, the addictive personality that just cannot really be present to take care of relationships or families the way that we need to. So with that, this is part of the waking up, is shifting consciousness from an external living to a more mindful being present, being aware of what you're feeling, being honest with your feelings. And I think, and as part of that, this is brings us into that super conscious living that you're talking about. So I want to really get into that, because this is what the message is today,
Yeah.
that we are transmitting these messages for so many humans that are beginning, as the current pandemic is bringing us home. We have more time. We all of the things that we were able to run away into. I can go shop, I can go to the movie, I can go to the bars, I can go to the gym, I can run, and we're not able to do those things. So they're saying that violence is up, child abuse is up, divorce is up. These are all the byproducts of this that we're not really talking about. And that is because coming home and being alone with self, or with the people that are in the same room with you that you haven't even been in relationship with, you don't even really know the person that is in bed next to you, or the children that are running around in the room. So this is a real pertinent message to so many humans that are beginning to look and say, wow, what is priority and what is my value? So talk to us about, you have developed this step-by-step process
Mhm.
of super conscious living, and that is just so beautiful to me. Talk a little bit about what that looks like, Caryn.
So it's a process of really constant. I use the caterpillar as my best
uh,
analogy for this. But we put the caterpillar first inside of a cage. So the caterpillar is inside of a cage at the very beginning of this. And the only thing the caterpillar has to do is believe that the door could open. that the door to the cage could open. He doesn't want anything. He, as a caterpillar, wants to walk through that door, or the cage door. And he believes it enough and he sees it well enough. So this is your visualization. This is your mantras. This is where law of attraction leaves people, really, is where super conscious living begins. One note, just super quick before you say that, the 1900s and all of the therapy brought us from unconscious to conscious. Tons of people are living very consciously. They're also living, again, with those excuses that therapy gives us. It's, can you rewrite your story? And when you're working with super consciousness, it's all about quantum entanglement. It's all about timeline merging. It's all about exactly what you said. We worry about the past, but nobody ever thinks about changing the past, because we say, oh, well, we can't change the past. You can change the emotions tied to the past. And all of those emotions that you have tied are actually trapped little pockets of energy. That's what trauma really is trapped emotion that didn't get moved all the way through during the event. So if you can go backwards and process those, then you're building up all this like rocket fuel, essentially, from every time you go back and actually decide that that was a lesson instead of a traumatic event.
And so that's kind of the baggage that we talk about, the baggage that we carry that we really don't even know we're carrying, is that emotion that has gotten trapped inside of us that we're not feeling and releasing.
And a lot of people heal that, and they're doing clearings and healings. And what I wondered was, well, what happens to that energy after I heal it? After I've cleared it out of my body, after I've released the trauma, after I've done that part, isn't it still like usable? Can't I like do something with it? If my energy field is limitless, then once it's out of my body, then it's back in my mental world. Then I can manipulate it however I want and then recondense it back into the physical. So that's what super conscious really, really, really is going into that mental causal plane and being like, I'm going to walk the path that makes, where I become the person who has those things. So I become the caterpillar who has the door open, and what possibly could be outside the door. And it's like, it's so hard. It's the big vision that's like, I could be president, I could be a billionaire, I could be on Oprah, all these crazy big visions. But what we know is that the second you have a thought in quantum physics, it exists somewhere. Just the fact that you can have the thought means that there is a timeline in which you actually do possess that thing. It's just that oh, it's just imagination. And from a very young age, we tell kids, oh, it's all in your head and you're just imagining things. But there's lots of things that I can't see with my physical eyes or touch or taste that are like Wi-Fi. The fact that we're even doing this show right now, radio waves. But oh, you're just imagining things. That could never happen. You're thinking too big. Get the windmills out of your head, Don Quixote. You know, it's those things that are just like, that really drives this. Again, it's very childlike. It's very playful when you actually start living your life this way. You just believe something. I believe that cage door could open. And then all of a sudden, the cage door does open and all the information from the world comes in and you're just kind of wobbled. You're kind of scared. You're like, holy crap, I made that happen. So that happens a lot. You manifest a whole lot of money and then you don't even know what to do with it. And a lot of the times that's when it slips through because you weren't actually ready. You didn't have your own container. And what happens in your life is that you start realizing what you actually want. Like you said, the priorities. You start keeping your word only with the things that bring you joy, only the things that you know will lead you to whatever it is outside that cage door. And in the process of doing that, things might fall away and you realize how much you were giving your energy out to other things, and no wonder you weren't manifesting what you wanted. You were contradicting your affirmations all the time. You were writing your new moon rituals intentions and then spending the whole lunar cycle wondering, well, what if it doesn't work out, what's my plan B? That's not conducive to creating. As soon as you ask for something, you have to just know that it's done and continue acting as if it has already happened and then move forward.
So, and I love this conversation, there is a law, a principle of creation.
Yep.
And we begin to realize that I am creator, that in that shift from an external reality where things are happening to me. That's the material world. And the material world is just the effect.
Yeah.
It's not the cause. So when we come back in and we begin to master our center, we realize that there's another whole world that is more real than this world. This world is just the the projection, or the thing that manifested from our mental world. So as a man thinketh, so
Mhm.
it becomes. We realize that our own personal thinking then is what, and choosing what we think, like you said, you've got to decide what is it you want to create. How many
Mhm.
people don't have a clue who they are and what
Oh,
they want?
that's the biggest thing, is that I play this game called the what if game with my clients. And a really fast version of this would be that you come home, the husband comes home, the wife's on the floor crying her eyes out, totally in just like absolute like pit of despair mode, how all the kids are going to die and the house is going to get caught on fire, and he has no idea what happened. And what had happened was that she came in and she had asked her oldest son to do the dishes or something, and because he didn't do the dishes, everything else in the afternoon was going to be thrown off, and she actually went into one of those like intense downward spirals that is classified as woman hysteria and ends up getting women constantly put on antidepressants, honestly. What's really happening is she's worrying, she's catastrophizing her life. And we catastrophize our lives, we can go layer all the way down. You go from the dirty dishes to the house is going to burn down, but there's like 15 and then this is going to happen, and then this, and then this, and then this, and oh my god, and everyone I know has done that at one point or another, or has known someone who does that. But when you ask them, okay, so you do get your $100,000, then what?
Correct.
And they just freeze. And I'm like,
Correct.
okay, so because you got a surprise bill in the mail, you went 15 layers deep to you jumping off a cliff, which is what usually happens because our manifestation is so strongly tied to our mortality. But when you're living in super conscious, you remember that you're actually just a fractal of God. You're just a tiny little projection. So everything you do in here is actually really inconsequential, and you stop worrying about your mortality. You stop giving a fuck about whether or not you're going to get assassinated as president, because you have shit to do.
So to go along with that, I remember asking a client, what is the, what is your greatest desire? And the client said to be happy.
Yeah, but what does that mean?
Well, but and there was no concept of the focus was so much on happiness that there was no context about, well, it would make me happy if I could walk along the beach with my children and spend a beautiful weekend vacation with my family, or that I could live in a cabin, by a brook in the mountains. Or there's got to be, because we are physical beings. Happiness is first the mental side, and yes,
Okay.
that's the side that we create from. But because we're physical beings, there's got to be some outer manifest form that when you have your beingness in and you're walking it, you're doing it, you're
Mhm.
speaking it, that you recognize, I'm happy.
Yep.
Or when you manifest, you say, I want a new set of china, or whatever, and whatever. Um, that until you actually then get that thing that you asked for, how do you know what you're manifesting if you're just not claiming that which you, and that's a visualization. You've got to.
Yeah, if you don't make room in your cabinets for the new china, how is it going to show up? If you
Correct.
don't actually go with your sister to that rummage, okay, so I know that we're not doing rummage sales right now because of COVID, but you know what I mean. If you don't go to with your sister that day that she suggests it out of the blue, how are you? There's so many people that I work with that are so obsessed with the dollar amount. I do tend to work with moms who are entrepreneurs who are in the same sort of I talk about stepping out of the broom closet and really just owning your full on, letting that freak flag fly, and realizing that a lot of people are looking for someone who's willing to do that and show them how, because we understand how to deal with our trauma. There are so many amazing trauma specialists and shame specialists and healers and every single type of energy work on the freaking planet. But there are very, very, very few people who are talking about, okay, you all want to live in this new earth. Who's going to build it? All of our buildings are empty right now for a reason. World War III is a mental war. It's a war in your mind. You're either terrified out of your mind, or you're doing things. You're either barely surviving or you're thriving right now. There's not really a very big middle zone in this situation. But it's causing you, like you said, to wake up. So when you're going through again the process, you realize this breakdown is happening. You get so clear and so focused on what it is that you do want to create, you actually start to break down that old version of who you were, and your boundaries are so strong that you start to create that chrysalis that those caterpillars form in. And they're in their own, they create their own chrysalis. They don't go find, they're not like a hermit crab that goes finds another shell that someone else created. Lobsters do this too, like they create new shells and break out of them. But the caterpillar turns into goo inside of the chrysalis. This is something that people don't like really understand about the process of metamorphosis. If you cut open a caterpillar chrysalis or look inside of it, it's just this gelatinous mixture of cells. And the cells are literally changing every day from having the DNA complex of a caterpillar to the DNA complex of a butterfly inside of this self-made cocoon. And during that process, that's what I call sitting in the goo. That's when you realize that the cage that you're in is actually dissolving away. The cage itself starts to disappear because you're like, I got me. I'm so good with me. Actually, and to other people, you are going to start looking like an arrogant narcissist. I will guarantee you that, because you look so shameless to them, because shame is such a normal part of society. That's why I don't even use the word shameless. I say unshameable. I got plenty in my own shame. You just can't put any on me. Versus
Well, I
someone
think
like
that's
maybe Donald Trump, who just doesn't have any.
yeah, that's when you move from that victim energy. And so people have been in relationship with you in that victim energy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the energy cord. You talked about entanglement, and
Yep.
how my aura is going to entangle with like
Yeah.
is going to sync with other like energy auras. So when you begin to dissolve that victim energy framework, or that victim energetic matrix, and take on a different energy pattern, your relationships are going,
Everything
oh my
changes.
God.
2 years ago, I went to Hawaii in August of 2016. And no, 2018, I went to Hawaii, and right before I bought all new clothes, and I was a size 14 US, and I'm now a size 2.
Oh my heavens.
And I
And that's
don't do anything like crazy working out. I go hiking now. That's a new thing. That's a 30-day new thing that
and
I go
so would you
hiking.
say that was just part of shedding that
It was
baggage?
all shedding the baggage.
Oh
I
my
I stopped
heavens.
vibrating at the, like, my body stopped processing meat. So a lot of people are like, "Oh, you're vegan." But I know a lot of really unhealthy vegans that are still overweight.
Right.
My body stopped processing it. I can actually eat wild caught, like if someone were to go shoot an elk, because I live in Utah, we're still hunters around here, and on their own property, and make elk chili, I could actually eat that. It's the vibration of factory farms that my body is just not in line with. So anything like that, if it's very local, handcrafted, the way that we used to eat when we were hunters and gatherers and back in small towns, my body can actually process that. But if it's a hamburger from McDonald's, no, I literally will throw up the
Well, I
second
think
I
that
taste it.
translates into the more pure energy, as you start getting rid of that toxic baggage,
Mhm.
which translates into also toxic energy. See, we've got to really get that our entire world is energy created,
Yeah, this is a
energy
whole
related.
life alignment system. I might
And
work with people who are leaders and want to be politicians and want to be, I got PTA moms that I work with, like anyone who really wants to step as a leader and be like, no, this is how we should be living. We're all living consciously, but we're still all living as like unconscious victims, consciously choosing whatever. Like
I
it's
don't
not
even call
working.
that conscious.
It's not even conscious because
I
everyone's
really
read The
don't.
Secret. Everyone's
And
read
I
The
don't think
Secret,
that
so they
anybody
think
even
that,
realize how unconscious
yeah,
they are. I mean,
no,
everybody thinks, "Oh, I'm conscious." And
yeah.
yet we
And
know
they don't,
science tells us
yeah.
that we live what 95, 97% of our everyday unconsciously. So,
Yeah, we only use 5% of our brain. We're only able to take in like the average person can take in 5 or 6 bits of information when there's 40 billion bits of information floating around you at any moment in time. And someone who's like extremely quote unquote psychic can reach about like 10 bits. But if you think of the fact that there's 40, like 4 billion bits floating around you and all the different levels of energy, if you were to take scanners in a room and like put them on all the different energy field readings and like overlap them, there's 40 billion different bits. Like there's so much information that we're not tapping into, yet we're all radiating our own energy field as well. And we can map that. We can see that there's heart maps. Like nothing I talk about is anything that can't be then linked back to a very scientific, intensely researched, double blind study. Like I am a super nerd and I own that with pride, but it's because I really believe that there are bridges from the metaphysical to the political, from the metaphysical to the economic, from the metaphysical to the social. If we could just see that your witch wound from being burned at the stake in the 1500s don't mean jack because it all happened to us.
mine
Get
was
over yourself,
1600.
get over your past lives and start
Yeah.
using those lessons. I tap into things from past lives and then learn those lessons and bring them in now so I don't have to learn that lesson in this lifetime because I don't have time for that. I'm trying to change the whole freaking world. People don't
Karen,
use
I
it.
am
They
so
just
sorry, but
don't
we're going to
use it.
take a quick break.
Oh, you're good.
We've just, my heavens, what an amazing conversation. So thank you everybody for listening, and don't leave us. We'll be back in just a moment. Namaste.
This is the story of a very
Don't wait. Communicate. Make your emergency plan today.
Welcome back, everyone, on this Sunday morning. We just thank you for hanging with us and listening to this most powerful message. Today, I am with Caryn Terres, beautiful mother, great spiritual guide, leader, creator, master creator, talking about super conscious living. So we were talking before we left about how unconscious living, um, most humans live, and super conscious living is the art of, or the process of, which by the way Caryn teaches, um, the art of becoming more conscious of your life and moving into your personal power, accepting uh, the responsibility that you are the creator and you create the life that you want to live, to walk out of that victim mentality that says, well, all of this stuff is happening to me and I have no power and I have no control. So um, I'd like for you to maybe talk a little more about what is the process that you might take someone through that says, "Wow, Caryn, I mean, my life has just gotten to a place where it's unmanageable. I just feel helpless. I'm really lost, and I really need your assistance." Where would you start with that?
So I would start with, well, I can honestly tell you those aren't the type of people that I work with. The people that I work
Okay.
with are the ones who have already been healing for a really long time and are kind
Okay.
of like, I'm over this. Like, what's next? I've
Okay.
already mastered the law of attraction, but I want to start creating new things. How do I become an innovator like Nikola Tesla or Thomas Edison, or these people that are like, I have, again, what like we were talking about, you have these harebrained ideas, but we've been conditioned to think that if it doesn't already exist, who are you to think that you can create it? So I am very much on the like, I work with most of the people who have like, okay, I get that I create my own life, but like, how
So,
exactly?
I really hate to interrupt here, but I just feel like I have to. One of the prophecies, one of the messages or the transmissions for this particular period, and it seems to be universal. I hear it everywhere. Is that coming into this new age? We've ended a one cycle of evolution, 26,000 year evolutionary cycle, and we've entered into this new era, and part of what we're going to see is new technologies, the birthing of new ideas,
Mhm.
people that your common man, instead of having the elite or just a few individuals at the top that are running the whole planet, more of the individuals are going to be coming forth and bringing these new ideas and new technologies. So what I'm hearing you say is that you're working with this group that has kind of already gone through divesting their baggage.
Mhm.
They're just ready now to really step up to the plate and be
Yeah.
that creator.
It's those
Sorry, but go
people, no,
ahead.
that's exactly what it is. It's those people who are like, okay, I have something really cool, but their fear is more tied to like, they probably fell on their ass in front of the whole student body once. And so now doing something that meant that they would have to get up in front of 1,000 people to pitch their idea is way too terrifying. Or they're pretty good at doing live streams from their own home, but the thought of going to Oprah Soul Sunday is like they will literally go vomit at the thought. So it's almost like the new, and also those people again who are like, I know that there is something I'm supposed to be bigger in that I'm not. So a lot of my clients come to me, we were talking before about sitting in the goo. That's where they are. They know that there is something, usually the thing that makes them want to throw up. I won't lie, it's usually the most terrifying thing that you can think of doing. That they know they have to do that before they're going to really actually move forward. They're usually pretty big life changes. I won't lie. Making that decree to the universe that you are ready to unhook completely from this idea that anyone or anything has any power over you, or that there are any victims. I hear all the time, um, people who say that they live very consciously and that they're really great at manifesting, or that they don't understand why they can't, it seems inconsistent. They're like, my energy work seems inconsistent, I can't figure it out. You go look at their values. Super conscious living is a very values based system. You look at their values and they say that they know that they're the ones who create their own lives and that they're not a victim of their own life. But then you ask them about things like war and poverty and famine and ask like, well, how do those things exist? And they get very angry and very saddened and very like, well, those things should never exist and that's not okay. And you're like, well, then you're a hypocrite, because you just said to me that you know that everything that happened in your life happened to you for a reason, and that on some level bigger than you chose it for the life lessons. So who are you to decide that that little girl in Syria who got blown up didn't do the same thing?
This is a really tough conversation, realizing that really the global condition, now we're kind of coming away from just the individual position, but the global stage is a projection of our global inner vision. And so every person on the stage is where they are in the evolutionary scale of, coming into the light. And so, wow, that's really powerful, because that's a big one, Caryn.
Yeah, it's a huge reason why I can tell you that most of my clients aren't getting what they think that they quote unquote deserve. They're like, why is it that all of my friends are having $50,000 months and I'm not having them? Well, when we go and dive deep down into their value system, there's an inconsistency between what they think is right for them. They have an entitlement. A lot of this comes down to entitlement and not being able to actually do the hard work, which is, it's not looking at your beliefs. We're looking at what you know to be true. When you look at what you know, that's when you actually find the most inspiration. Nikola Tesla and Albert Einstein attributed most of their success not to their logical thinking brains, but to the inspiration of their imagination.
That getting there, allowing their flow, that creative substance to come through the inspiration channel instead of the intellectual channel, which is so limited.
Trying to
and it's kind of frightening to allow that kind of high energy. I get that, to come through. And so I think sometimes we self-sabotage.
Oh, always.
Yeah.
It's not sometimes. You're always self-sabotaging, because what I'm describing to you is allowing yourself to go through ego death. Constant. I go through ego death on a daily basis. Who I was yesterday is not who I am today and is not who I will be tomorrow, in one area of my life or another.
This is a conversation I'm going to have you back on to have, is that ego death, because really until you die, if you're hanging on to the old man, by degree, you're in limitation. And it's that continual surrendering, letting go to the higher energy.
Yeah. And it's also letting go of like your old construct of like what we were talking about at the very beginning about the increase in domestic violence and abuse and all these other things going on. It's because we've now been allowing ourselves to redefine what those words even mean, or we're finally looking at it and saying, you know what, maybe that is what is happening to me. Maybe I don't know that my relationship right now is actually really amazing. And this is why your imagination is so strong and so powerful. You don't have to do anything. You can just walk down a little timeline meditation of, well, what would happen if I left him? What would my life look like if I actually created that $100,000? What might happen maybe if I ran for city council? You're not doing it. Your logical mind is actually really, really okay with the what if game, because all you're doing, you're not making any moves, you're not making any plans. You're just sitting there in your mind saying, well, let's just play a game. Like, could we just play a game? Like, you're really good at going downward, but let's go upward a little bit. Let's just play in an upward spiral of what is the highest height that we could think of. And when you're constantly reaching for the highest height, all of the things in between become more logical to you to achieve, because you're reaching for this totally unimaginable thing. And that's what happens when you actually take that step. The one that I told you that makes you want to puke. It's my favorite thing. Most of my clients will actually throw up as soon as they send me their payment, because they're like, I don't know what I just did, but whew, it's a really big deal, I can tell. And I'm like, yeah, because you're going to change your life. Your life is going to change.
Well,
Period.
it's coming out of that comfort zone and going into the unknown. And yet what I've learned is going into that unknown is actually not so unknown. You know, once we get into it, how many times do we say, oh my gosh, I cannot do that? And just saying I cannot limits the energy. The energy is already now at a vibrational rate that will synchronize with the manifestation of I cannot. Releasing the I cannot and letting that higher flow, that place where inspiration comes from, flow through you. That is quite intimidating to the ego, you know, to it truly is. So I get that.
It's super intimidating. That's why, again, I try to make it as childlike as possible. If we can get the ego back into a state where it was before it was fully solidified, then it's more likely to be malleable. You also stay in the same timeline by channeling your version of who, like, you are becoming a new person. If you wanted to have 50K months, but you don't have them right now, it's because you aren't the person who has them. You have to be a different person. So once you realize that it's so much bigger than you, it's not about the 50K months, it's about the amount of people you're going to impact, or the book that you're going to write, or the foundation you're going to make, or whatever it is, how you're serving. And yet your bigness allows you to serve more. You know, the bigger you're able to, instead of hoarding all your money, you actually realize my human based needs are always met by the universe because I am serving this bigger mission. And so I know that the universe is going to provide that for me. So I don't even think about or worry about anything like bills or where am I going to live or any of that when those big things come up to me, because I know that what my purpose is so much bigger that a house is just going to appear, or a new car is just going to, literally things appear, and we don't have to have a monetary exchange. The more we actually stop thinking about money as this middleman and think, and not this barter, but like actually, wow, holy crap, I just realized that I wanted a new house 6 months ago, and here I am walking into this fully furnished house that I'm not even having to pay rent for because of XYZ. Like, those things happen to my clients all the time.
That's a concept that, you know, I think is where people look at us and go, oh my heavens, you're a fanatic. You are absolutely off your rocker. How on earth do you have the rights to say that we can live that kind of life? But folks, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about shifting from a world supply to an unlimited supply. Do you believe in that kind of kingdom, whereby it says that there is a quantum energy field, a substance, a place whereby we get supply off world, not on world? Remember, this is a world of effect. The cause is what you just said, Caryn, and I love that. Here's our third interview, is being. We have it inverted. We think we've got to go out and do.
We think we have to have the things before we can be the person, but we have to be the person before we can. I tell my clients all the time, after you work with me, you're going to be stepping into that life like a tailor-made suit. It's going to feel so seamless and so perfect, and there's not going to be any holes in it, because when you're expanding, our habit is to collapse again and collapse. So again, like I said at the very beginning, what did I explain? You get a whole lot of money and then all of a sudden it's just gone instantly, because you don't have a solid container for it, because you don't actually believe you're worthy of holding on to that level of energy. They just print money and make it up anyway. It is freaking limitless. They just add another zero in the freaking computer and then there's more of it.
So Caryn, we're coming
thinks it's not being just printed and made on trees is living in a super old era, because that's exactly what they do.
So my heavens, this 55 minutes has flown by. What I want to do, if we have really quick time, and just hope you'll come back on because
Oh,
there's so
absolutely.
many
It's been
things for
fun.
us to talk about. But give the audience your contact information.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
So Caryn Terres, it's spelled a little funky. So hopefully you guys can go and like it's there, right? They can see how it's spelled, right?
go ahead and give it.
Okay, so it's Caryn, and then T is in Tom, ERRES is in Sam. So that's, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Those are all of, I'm literally the only person on the whole planet with my name. So if you Google that, you will find all sorts of things. It's all me. I will own it. It's fine. And if you want to join me in Super Conscious Leaders, it's www.carynterres.com/super conscious leaders. That's how you would be able to join me in my membership group, which is really the only way to work with me on a really big scale right now. But it's the best way to really just dive in and explore what your life could be like if you allowed yourself to dream that impossible dream and then know that you're worthy of living it.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Wow. There were so many, you know, avenues that we could have gone into, my heavens. So thank you everyone for listening to the Awakening podcast series. We're just really blessed to have you, and we give you blessing and namaste.
Thank you so much. Namaste.